today we are diving into the best offense in the NFL, which, oh my God, is somehow the New Orleans Saints offense. Right. The Saints lead the NFL in offensive DVOA, EPA per play on offense, net yards per pass attempt with 10.5. Second place, by the way, is 8.3, and good old-fashioned points scored. So, Nate Tice, I ask you, why? And then before you answer, I will say, as someone who was higher than consensus on the Saints offense this year, I wrote an article about it for the site. Yep. It is the receipts can be checked.
Yes.
I didn't see this coming. Okay. So I thought they would be better, maybe just even watchable this year. Mm-hmm. I did not see best offense in the league coming, but people want to know, why the hell is this happening? Because it was not an expected result.
It surprised me a little bit. I thought there'd be more competency there because of Klint Kubiak, the new offensive coordinator. And if you know what Gary Kubiak, his dad, and what that offense is, it's the Shanahan offense, it's this kind of merger of the zone world with some of this drop back scheme and play action stuff. That's kind of the meta in the NFL right now, but it's a very sound offense. Pete Carmichael, the previous offensive coordinator, was some outdated stuff and maybe didn't have some of the Sean Payton kind of twists, what he does with some of the traditional stuff in that offense. So in this Kubiak offense, it's a lot of zone runs. Zone runs take advantage of defenses that aren't really sound or aren't keeping their gaps or can get manipulated easily. And really the Cowboys game, a Cowboys defense that I'm still high on, really, actually, even after this game, which is crazy to say, but is they manipulated them every snap. It was a very well game planned offense. And I think that's what really showed with Klint Kubiak is even in the run game, and you saw Kamarra and you saw, everybody was just feeding. But on those runs, it was always away from Micah Parsons, or it was always when Micah Parsons was off the field. And what that showed to me was not only just the passes and like, hey, we're going to attack this corner, we're going to attack this linebacker, even the details of the run game, that's really positive. And that just shows that they had a really well-orchestrated game plan, especially against the Cowboys, which makes sense. You have time to prep for it. You have the off season. This is kind of how coaching goes. You usually prep for the first two games, maybe a little for the third game. By game 4, it's like, all right, now we have this year's film. We can work off from that. But this offense is going bully ball. They're only in 11 personnel, which is 3 wide receivers, 22% of their snaps, which is hilarious. The league average is 61%. They have a nearly 18% explosive play percentage, which these are just obscene numbers. And I think that I want to compliment what they are doing, but I also want to say it's like, this is a little bit of early season, just 2 game sample size stuff happening right now. And just, they caught the Cowboys perfectly, clear in the jaw. Yeah. It was a flash knockout and it was like, good on them. The NFL is really tough to do that for 17 games. So it's kind of talking out both sides of my mouth. It's good, but it's also, I want to see it in 3 weeks when they can't, have a perfectly orchestrated game plan from the offseason. Having said that, for what they want to do, it's pretty good how their schedule is setting up for at least the next 3 weeks as far as how they want to run the ball. And there's other things, but that is just the basis of it. It's a very sound run game and it's keeping them out of third downs. It's keeping everything manageable. And Derek Carr is unpinning the grenade and just launching stuff. And that's just the formula right now. And it's working. It's a good formula to have with this offense.
Yeah, you mentioned that schedule coming up. They got the Eagles, they got the Falcons, they have the Chiefs. That'll be interesting. The Bucks in week 6. So there's some spots in here where at least once we get to the Chiefs and the Bucks, those are some interesting defensive coordinators, defensive play callers. We'll see what this offense is doing by that point. I'm with you that this definitely feels like an early season. Oh my God, we were not expecting this out of the Saints. And especially, again, you do it against the Panthers, that's one thing. You do it against the Cowboys, that's another. I do almost kind of wonder, like, Mike Zimmer, did you watch the film from week 1? Brother, what were we doing here? Like, we were shocked by the outside zone runs, and we were shocked by the deep play action shots. That's what happened in week 1. And I do think we talked about this, I think, in Football 301 after week 1, Nate, that we were definitely high on that Cowboys defense and what we saw. So I was surprised for sure by this result, but yeah, I'm still sort of somewhere between, is this sustainable or is this just a flash in the pan? Let's dive into some different parts of what's going on here offensively. And I want to start with the part that I was actually most skeptical about, which was the run game. Certainly from a fantasy perspective, I was a little iffy on Kamarra because generally he's at a point in his career where they're, we're worried about age. We're worried about workload.
Yep.
We're worried about declining efficiency metrics and things like that. At the same time, when it was pretty clear that nobody was going to challenge him in that backfield, Kendra Miller has been like a fantasy Twitter obsession. A guy that I do think he popped in college, but he's clearly never earned anything by that coaching staff. By the end of the sun, Dennis Allen will tell you that. Dennis Allen, very, very honest, maybe to a fault with what he thinks about his players sometimes in the offseason for sure. He just never clearly, he just continued to say, if you can't impress us, you can't be part of the team if you're never playing. And Miller was basically never playing. So that kind of was like, okay, Kamara's going to have a workhorse role, but the rushing success has been the thing that's taken me by surprise here. So according to Fantasy Points data, the Saints are 68% zone rushing team, behind only the Falcons and the Texans so far this year. Again, sort of guys off the same tree here, so we know what we're working with. That being said, Kamarra is third in success rate on both zone and man gap runs. I think that's been something that when they want to go to man gap runs and they want to run more power concepts, Kamarra has been able to do that too, and he still clearly has the juice. That's what's been exciting to me, is that when there's holes there, he can hit it and be super effective. So he is definitely somebody from a rest of season perspective, especially with all the injuries at running back. Man, there's not. He's definitely a guy that I'm higher on now than I certainly was 3 weeks ago.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like you said, the juice that he showed, that's more than him being like just a good football player, which he always has been. You have to be realistic about running backs, especially one that wasn't, his athleticism is different, than a lot of others. It's body control and balance, and it's not the overwhelming speed, but he's the guy that can manage to move faster because he's so smart, just understands space and all those things. But it's also, how do those guys age? And that's always dicey. The easiest ones is, the fast guy ages better because they just have the more juice to start with. But it's kind of cool to see him like, you're still maintaining this. Like, this is what Alvin Kamara looks like. This is the player. There's not, this is a Diet Coke version or anything. They're going to feed him too. This is, again, it's a Kubiak Shanahan offense. The formula is going to be run first, run second, and then boot off of it. It's all going to come down to how they sustain on third down. What they've been able to do is mitigate their offensive line, patchiness, especially on the left side. They have a rookie out there in Fuaga who actually looked pretty good, but that's a game script that is very conducive to him. Never having a one-on-one block and pass pro. Everything's play action or boot or screens or running the ball, which he is good at. What happens when the game script isn't a bomb to Shaheed right away, screen that goes for 70 yards with Cesar Ruiz sprinting as fast as a receiver right next to Alvin Kamara?
That was sick, though.
It's impressive as hell. That's why I had to look it up. I was like, how fast is this guy moving? 17 miles an hour, which is ridiculous.
Not bad for a big fella.
310 pounds. Yeah, just do that math. But it's, I just have to see those game scripts, because that's always the classic thing with the Shanahan offense. That's the thing that has worried me, is how they would drop back, but they don't want to. So they're going to know how to kind of mitigate that. You know what I mean? They know that that's not the strength of their team. That these are good signs. I'm still curious what the ceiling is, but they do have juice at the receivers. Olave still looks great, and they're actually using him really well. Hey, let's not just use him on deep balls. Let's actually let him use some route running and let him get open and stuff and in work space. I feel like I just keep talking on both sides of my mouth with it, because it's like they kind of know what they are, and that's really good, but I don't know how high that goes. And I might be selling them short, but I'm not sure if I am. Like, I don't know, but I think it's, my takeaway is that it is positive. It is a good baseline to have, and it's a much more positive baseline, especially if Derek Carr plays as aggressive as he is. That's the thing, is I want to see if he stays as aggressive, because that opens everything else up. And again, it's a very, very positive thing. But again, we got to see when. I don't think the next couple of weeks though. So like we mentioned, schedule Eagles, who you can run on, so you're good there. Falcons, I think you run. Yep. Yeah, Falcons, I think you run on decently. Chiefs, you can run on again, but you don't want to get in the third and long. It's just like Zimmer. It's just like Bulls. Bucks, same thing. But you can't really run on them as well, Vea and all those types of things. But next couple of weeks, they can probably stay out of these damaging game scripts. So I don't know if they get tested like as maybe I want to see them get tested. But it is positive if you are a Saints fan and if you have any of these fantasy players, because I do think the baseline is higher than maybe even I said it.
Yeah, I mean, even from a run game perspective, this guy's obviously not a fantasy starter, but Jamal Williams has pretty good, like from a success rate standpoint. I talk about guys who have more than 15 carries on the season. He's 10th in zone rushing success rate too, and he's only gotten 17 carries on zone runs, but for 4.35 yards per carry, like he's even a guy that, just knock on wood, anything happens to Kamarra, I don't think people are thinking, oh, Jamal Williams, one of the better kind of backup running back insurance policies off the waiver wire, but he might be somebody to just think about when we get to that point of the season, when we get into stash season, because it just looks so competent. That's the thing. And I noticed something too. I think you've talked to me about this with the Texans offense last year, when you noticed that, oh, these guys are really well coached and there's a lot of buy-in here because the receivers are blocking and the receivers are bought in. And I think Chris Olave is not Nico Collins. He's not these guys from a size perspective, but he's giving it his best shot out there. He's definitely digging dudes out in the run game, which I think is pretty cool to see, because that does, one, I think, speak to this point about there's a lot of buy-in here. And I also juxtapose it back to last year with the Saints. How many times did people point out like, oh, is Chris Olave like low-footed on this route, or what's going on between him and Derek Carr and all that? We had the conversation on Football 301 about Bryce Young and why you got to bench him because you can't lie to the players. Like, I thought these guys in New Orleans last year knew we're effed. Like, what this 2006 offense is not going to get it done, and we're not getting deployed in the right ways, and it's going to make us all look worse. And I think that does bleed on. This is not film room stuff. This is just kind of human nature. I think that does you see that bleed onto the field, though. You see that, like, okay, they're not totally bought into this. They don't think they're going to be, this is their careers, man. This is their lives, and they don't think they're being put in the right position. You start to see that, just like any of us would at any of our jobs. If we don't think we're being put in a good position, you're not going to be totally bought in. I think this year, when you look at what just Olave particularly, and I want to break him down from a player perspective too, but just from that part of it, that makes me think like, oh, this team is really dialed into what's going on here.
It's a fantastic point, and we've talked about this with Ayuk and Shanahan, and how he got in the doghouse and he came out better for it. He became a better football player, not just an athlete, and route runners and details and blocking, is because these coaches, their formula, and I know people have frustrations with the Texans and like they run it too much. Stroud should be throwing it 90% of the time, but this is the formula. Sometimes it's better than others, like getting 5 yards a pop, maybe you only get 3.8 yards a pop per run. But how they get the receivers to buy in is they go, hey, you block on these plays. Once we get in the red zone where we can get you, let's get that touchdown and let you dance. Like Bruce Arians was fantastic about it. And getting Hines Ward, he would tell stories about Hines Ward and about how much he'd ask him to block, but he goes, we get inside the 10, guess who's got 3 play designs coming their way? It's like, that'll get a guy to buy in. Shanahan is phenomenal at it. Watch whenever a guy for the 49ers gets tackled at the 1 or 2 yard line. Guaranteed who's getting the next touch. He has a play, like a sweep for Debo or something he always makes sure they get rewarded if they did the work for it. And I think that's what's going on here. Kubiak's no dummy. He's been around the game. He understands how these players you sometimes need to dangle that carrot, and touchdowns are the biggest carrot for these guys. But I just, it's so hard for me to like kind of separate these thoughts, but it's like, this is good. This is maybe, I was maybe underselling Kubiak and just had some memories from his past stops somewhere. Maybe just thought he was unimaginative, but it was just seeing that how much him and how much he got through with Carr. And you could tell that he's like, hey, you're going to have a spot here. So throw it high or take the dig here instead of just checking it down. I don't know. They're getting through to it. There's a lot of just that aggressiveness that you have to get into the quarterback because that's trust in him. This is just all positive signs, even if, again, I don't know if it's like top 5, but it's better than bottom 10 that I maybe thought this could end up, because I thought the O-line would just be so iffy.
Well, the Carr part of it is really interesting because, I did see a funny TikTok about, because I'm a loser and I saw this on TikTok. I saw someone point out that like Derek Carr is absolute money in election years. Have you seen this floating around?
Yes. And I was with him in 2016 and he had the MVP run that year. That was yes. So I did see that.
He's absolutely fired up about the Hillary Trump stuff in 2016. Then in 2020, I think he had his best passer rating of his career. And dude, we're back here in 2024. He is fired up for election season. There's something about political discourse that really gets Derek Carr ready to push it downfield.
Isn't there some I remember they used to have some math or some stat like election year with the Washington Cowboys game. Like there's like something, whoever wins that game will tell who wins the presidency that year. Yeah, I don't know. This might be some old ESPN thing, back from like 2002 that I just remember, or 2000. But that used to be like a thing. It was like the Washington Cowboys game. Anyone listening to this that knows what I'm talking about, please bring that up because that was a thing for a while.
Colin says he's going to look it up. As a Cowboys fan that grew up in the Northern Virginia area, he's on it. So researcher, it's right up his alley for producer Colin.
At him.
100%. That'll keep him busy while we talk about Derek Carr for
I looked
30
up Kamara's
more minutes.
High max speed, by the way. He hit 19.53 in week 2 against Dallas. He hasn't broke 19 in 2 years. 19 miles an hour. It looked like that.
It
really
did look like that. And I will say too, before I get back to Carr on a serious note, not the election stuff, I do want to talk about the offensive line too, because this was a unit that I talked with Brandon Thorne in the offseason, and we were both extremely skeptical of the Saints offensive line, and especially the tackle play. But man, they are kicking ass. Okay. I got to give a shout out to Trevor Penning. When watching the week 2 film back, I thought he played pretty damn well in that game.
I did not notice him. And that is the best compliment I could give him. I'd never noticed him.
Yes, exactly. Like you're never like, oh, there's Penning. I wouldn't say he was playing his ass off or anything like that, but just sound. And I know he's a guy that has been on the other end of the offensive line, kind of the tilt there, in that sometimes you notice him for like, wow, look at that crazy block or whatever. And then there's, 5 other players where he's absolutely blowing his assignment or something like that, kind of the nonsense stuff of offensive linemen. But not right now. He just seems like a guy that's dialed in and in rhythm with what's going on here. Again, I feel like there's buy-in. I think Fuaga they've like run off the left side, off tackle has been really good. I'm with you. We'll see where this goes when they have to get in more pure dropback settings. It is worth noting though with Derek Carr, I just looked this up, that he literally does have a perfect passer rating on dropbacks with no play action and no screens. So, I mean, that is...
He's spinning it right now.
He is spinning it. So the things that also help your offensive line out is plays with motion, pre-snap motion at the snap, where Derek Carr, 13.3 YPA, 142.6 passer rating. Obviously, talk about this a lot whenever I'm talking about the Saints. Play action, they went from 32nd to first. Motion, they went from basically last to top 5. So design rollouts, they've also, this was from Seth Walder of ESPN, they've also gone from 25th to first in design rollouts. So they're just pushing all the right buttons that I think helps that offensive line and helps a quarterback. But man, the throw that Derek Carr made to Rashid Shaheed on the touchdown against Dallas, I mean, that was a blackout throw. That again makes me think that Carr is feeling it too. Again, you see him kind of like acting up after plays too, like getting in JC Horn's face with the 3, doing the dance after his rushing touchdown.
He talked about that 8 years ago, that he would do the Michael Jackson after he scored a rushing touchdown. And I never saw him hit it because he didn't really have rushing touchdowns for a long time. And then he finally, all of a sudden he does that. And then like my brain was like, oh my God, he finally did it. He finally hit the Michael Jackson 8 years later after he said he would after a rushing touchdown. But yeah, no, to your point, it's definitely confidence that's happening right now.
Yeah, Shaheed, I think, is perfectly deployed in this offense. Like looking at him as that motion man, and I talked about him for reception perception. The offseason is not great working to the sideline, not great working on outbreaking routes, but in breaking routes, really high success rates there. They're getting him done with that. I do wonder if we'll see more and more kind of routes to the outside, things like that. That's an area of development if they have to get into more pure drop back situations. But yeah, I think Shaheed, if you have him on your fantasy team, this is a guy I would not be trying to sell high on or anything like that. I think there's some sustainability here, especially because you mentioned they're doing so much with heavy personnel. They don't necessarily have they don't necessarily have a great third receiver. I think he's going to continue to be not just like a deep threat, a gimmick player. I think he'll be a continual kind of contributor in the offense. But I want to go back to Chris Olave here because, Nate, I think Chris Olave might be the best buy low in fantasy right now because one, we all know the Saints offense is great. He has not had an explosive game. He had 11 yards in the first game when they dusted the Panthers. And then, fantasy players are selfish. They're spoiled. An 80-yard game is not good enough. There will definitely be people that are upset with the bottom line results of Chris Olave. But I went back and charted him this morning. He's awesome, consistently
Yes, he
getting
is.
open. And what I thought was really interesting with his usage was he's like basically a pure outside receiver. That's not surprising. He's mostly been an on the line of scrimmage player. He kind of, if I can make a non-perfect comparison, he's sort of playing that role that Nico Collins played for the Texans last year as the X. Not that they're not the same type of player, but he's run a dig route or a slant route in my charting on 47% of his routes. He is doing all big in-breakers, which, wow, when you get a guy running routes over the middle of the field, he can actually get into space and he can run after the catch. And I think isn't that crazy? Like, it's almost as if how you're used influences your yards after catch numbers. So this is a guy, Nate, that in his first 2 seasons ran an alarming amount of deep curls and go routes. And that has almost been completely removed from his route tree, which I think it's only a matter of time till he absolutely smashes. And the fact also, just last note on this before I throw it back to you with Olave, when you said like, oh, they get rewarded for like grit and hard work, I'd almost guarantee you at some point Kubiak's like, yeah, Chris has been making contested catches. Chris has been helping us move the chains. He's been blocking the run game. It's about time we get him in the end zone. I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. Chris Olave is getting in the end zone this week in week 3.
I think so too. You mentioned Shaheed too, and this is where these two pair together so well, is because he's a true deep threat. And Olave, that was so funny with Olave's profile was he didn't have overwhelming size, even though he's fine. But then everyone was worried about how he would run at the combine. Would he break 4.4? And then he flew at the combine. They messed up the testing at first. At first it was like 4.28 or something like that. And then they realized it was still sub 4.4. And it's so funny is he's a crafty route runner, that can do some stuff after the catch, but that's what his gift was, or that's what his strength was. And it's funny that it took this long, or maybe 2.5 years. So it's like, oh yeah, let's ask him to run a full route tree because he can do it already. And let's just have Shaheed go over the top. And then that creates, it's the Xavier Worthy stuff that we talked about. Shaheed's, I think, better. But he creates so much space that all these guys in the intermediate areas, that's what heavy personnel passing concepts are, is you're going to attack deep and intermediate. The tight ends and the running backs are the underneath guys. It's the opposite. Quick game is everybody's underneath. Play action is the receivers truly are the deep threats. If you do it with only 2 receivers on the field, they're going to run a lot of posts and overs, a lot of corners, a lot of big boy routes that create big explosive plays. So you might not get the heavy reception, 8 catches, yada, yada, but you might get those 4 for 110 games, those 3 for 90 games, 3 catches. That's what this offense is built to be like. But they can do it because they have the personnel for it. It's a really, really good mishmash of guys that I maybe kind of undersold again. But I think just Olave's being able to, once they do get to third down, maybe Shaheed does get limited on some of the stuff, but Olave can do whatever they want him to do, which again might benefit, like you said, in the rest of the year, because then that's when the more catches come because he gets more of those third downs. I think they've only had like 6 or 8 third downs on the year, like true passing downs.
Yeah.
They've scored every series that they had this season. Like that's just obscene. So, but once we get into more real game scripts, Olave benefits from that as opposed to Shaheed. Shaheed's the knockout punch guy, while Olave is more the jab guy who can knock you out as well. But I'm totally with you. I think he's a phenomenal player that it's only going to get better.
I like that. Yeah, over the next 4 weeks, when we've got the Eagles, the Falcons, the Chiefs, the Bucks, we'll see what the Falcons are. I feel a little bit better about them right now than I certainly did 7 days ago. But those are at least 3 of the 4 teams are teams that you can that can score on you. So I agree with you. Olave and those game scripts will be good. Just last point on the route percentages. In 2022, I charted Olave with 7.4% slants, 13% dig routes. So that's combined 20.4%. In 2023. 13.4% slants. And by the way, that 7.4 is the lowest of any player I've ever charted. 7.4%. Lowest for any player in terms of slant.
I was going to say, that seems really...
It's disturbingly low. 13.4% slants in 23, 10.8% digs. So combined, he's run more dig routes this year than those 2 routes combined. So again, I think that's just perfect for Carr. It's perfect for everything here. And the more we talk about it, honestly, the more I'm getting more convinced that this can be stable in terms of being like a top 15 offense, maybe not a top 5, top 10 offense, but certainly all of these players I think are going to, with Olave, he went really high in fantasy. He's going to have to be good to beat that ADP, but I think all these guys are going to end up going down as really big values.